I plan to speak about an Iranian regime that is threatening to destroy Israel, that's devouring country after country in the Middle East, that's exporting terror throughout the world, and that is developing, as we speak, the capacity to make nuclear weapons, lots of them. I have a moral obligation to speak up in the face of these dangers while there's still time to avert them.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at AIPAC yesterday clarifying the purpose behind his address to a joint session of Congress. We welcome you in now to Hour 2 of America's Forum with Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth. And Miranda, this long-awaited and somewhat controversial speech is about an hour away.
Yeah, and about an hour from now, Netanyahu will address Congress about the dangers of making a nuclear deal with Iran. As you just heard, we've heard both positive and negative reactions about the speech in the U.S., but what are the people in Israel saying right now?
Joining us for an in-depth analysis, the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel, David Rubin. He's also the founder and president of the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, and he's the author of 4 books, including his newest, Sparks from Zion. David, it's always good to have you here on America's Forum. Are sparks flying in Israel in the wake of the Prime Minister coming to Washington to give this speech?
Well, those political sparks are certainly flying fast and furious right now. The darts are being aimed at the Prime Minister from all directions, but mostly from the left. And as you have elections coming up on March 17th, I wouldn't expect otherwise. But I would have hoped that those on the left of the political spectrum would have at least understood that when the Prime Minister is representing Israel in Congress, that they should at least show their respect. And I haven't seen any respect from the so-called Zionist camp of Herzog and Livni. It's kind of sad.
Do you think, though, that that's because they feel like the Prime Minister kind of bypassed the president?
Well, I
and
don't
they
think
view that
that's
as being disrespectful? I mean, is that the real reason why they're opposing this?
Right. So if they felt that Speaker Boehner was disrespectful to Obama, why should they be disrespectful to the Prime Minister of Israel? Look, the fact is that Herzog, who was the representative of the biggest left-wing party in Israel, who was Netanyahu's main opponent in the Israeli elections, he said just a few days ago that he basically agrees with Netanyahu on the Iran issue. So if he really agrees with Netanyahu on the Iran issue, well, he should be standing with the Prime Minister in getting across the message to Congress that this deal that is being it's about to be signed between Obama and the other Western powers opposite Iran is a dangerous, dangerous deal for Israel. It is a deal that enables the Iranians to continue enriching uranium, which can only be used for military means. If they had a clause in this agreement that said that they would not be allowed to enrich uranium, period, then I think that most Israelis would be in favor.
David, you mentioned the fact that Mr. Netanyahu's principal political opponent, quote, stands with him, at least in terms of the attitude toward dealing with Iran. Former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Danny Ayalon, has been on with us, and he expressed a concern saying, gee, it would have been nice for the Prime Minister to invite his opponents to join him in Washington to present a unified front. In the minute that remains, your reaction to Ambassador Ayalon's notion?
Well, first of all, there was an invitation that was given. It's actually not accurate. The invitation was issued, and one of Netanyahu's top advisors did issue an invitation and said that the leaders of the other parties are welcome to come and join the Prime Minister and stand with the Prime Minister as he addresses the American public, and much more than the American public, in fact. So the invitation was there. It's just petty politics, and I'm sorry to see that petty politics, both on the American side of the ocean and the Israeli side of the ocean, are distracting people from the real message. But I'm convinced that we're going to hear that real message given by the Prime Minister and Congress.
And we will talk more about that real message with David Rubin when we come back.
There is a seriousness that we need to move forward. As we have said all along, we need the necessary political will to understand that the only way to move forward is through negotiations.
Welcome back. That is Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif characterizing the need for negotiations as talks between the United States and Iran continue. Meanwhile, here in this country, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will speak in less than an hour. He'll address a joint session of Congress about the consequences of setting up a deal with Iran. With that in mind, let's continue our conversation now with the former mayor of the Israeli city of Shiloh, David Rubin. David, again, we thank you for your time. Before the break, you were decrying petty politics. Here in this country, we have a situation where our Secretary of State is in Geneva to continue negotiating with the Iranians when your Prime Minister is addressing a joint session of Congress. Your thoughts on that dynamic?
Well, unfortunately, it speaks volumes about where the Obama administration is focusing. The Obama administration, rather than really listening to what the Prime Minister of Israel knows about the Iranian program and what the Israeli Prime Minister is warning all of Western civilization about, Kerry is running off to speak to the Iranians, to continue to close this bad deal before Congress can do anything about it. That is the real concern coming out of the White House, that they are concerned that Netanyahu actually has the potential, if he gives a powerful speech before Congress and really gives some important information about this deal, that it could torpedo the whole deal. And and frankly, I think that is what needs to happen, because this is a dangerous deal. It's a very, very dangerous deal, not just for Israel, but for the United States as well. Do you understand why the Iranians are building intercontinental missiles? Not to attack Israel. They could attack Israel already with what they have at the moment. But they want intercontinental missiles to attack the United States.
And yet, as part of the atmospheric surrounding the proposed speech by the Prime Minister, we understand that some top Israeli military officials have said the Prime Minister's speech will harm Israel and actually help Iran. What about that assessment?
Well, military people are trained to win wars. Military people aren't trained to become good politicians and to understand international diplomacy. So unfortunately, Israel has had a string of generals that make their way into politics. And there are some who turn out to be very good politicians and really understand international diplomacy. But there are others that don't. There are others that would have been better to leave on the battlefield taking orders from the political leadership.
David, 2 minutes remain, and I want to get your comments about a report that appeared in a Kuwaiti newspaper over the weekend. I'm sure you're familiar with it. The report that President Obama threatened to have the American military shoot down Israeli jets if Israel proceeded with a military attack against Iran and Iran's nuclear facilities last year. Do you believe that report? And what about its sourcing to a Kuwaiti newspaper?
Well, there have been a number of reports coming out of the Arab world, out of the Arab media, which is very interesting. That was one of them. And then, of course, there was the report from Saudi Arabia, in which one of the top columnists in Saudi Arabia wrote in his column that Obama is a foolish president who doesn't understand that the message that Netanyahu is giving is an important message. And that's coming from Saudi Arabia, from the Arab world. And if they're concerned about this bad deal that's about to be signed, and if they're speaking positively about the Israeli prime minister, well, that certainly says a lot about the content of this agreement that Obama and Kerry are trying so hard to sign.
And it would also say whether or not there's any veracity to the Kuwaiti report. You not only have Saudi Arabia, but presumably Kuwait with this story talking about the importance of a Netanyahu-led Israeli government, despite some of the outward appearances and rhetorical hostilities that exist. David Rubin, as always, we appreciate your insights. It is worth noting that the new book from David Rubin is entitled Sparks from Zion. You see the cover right there. We should also note that you will see full coverage of Prime Minister Netanyahu's address to the Congress of the United States right here on Newsmax TV. And when we come back, Betsy McCoy will join us.